When American and British forces invaded Iraq on March 20, 2003, President George W. Bush promised a swift liberation that would disarm Saddam Hussein of weapons of mass destruction and support for terrorism and bring democracy to the Middle East. The invasion succeeded militarily within weeks. As American tanks rolled through Baghdad's streets, Saddam's regime collapsed, and jubilant crowds pulled down his statue in scenes broadcast worldwide as proof of liberation. Yet the weapons of mass destruction that justified the war did not exist. The links to terrorism were fabricated, and within months, Iraq descended into an insurgency that would kill hundreds of thousands and drag American forces into a grinding occupation that lasted nearly 9 years. The real story behind Operation Iraqi Freedom reveals how intelligence failures, political pressure to justify a predetermined decision to invade, and catastrophic post-war planning transformed what appeared to be a rapid military victory into one of America's longest and most controversial wars. March 19, 2003, at approximately 10:15 p.m. Eastern Time, American cruise missiles and precision-guided bombs struck targets in Baghdad in what military planners called decapitation strikes, designed to kill Saddam Hussein and his top leadership in the war's opening moments. Explosions lit up the night sky over Baghdad as reporters broadcasting live from hotels described the assault unfolding before them. While Americans watching at home saw the beginning of a war their government insisted was necessary to prevent Saddam from providing weapons of mass destruction to terrorists who might attack the United States. The strikes, targeting a compound where intelligence suggested Saddam was meeting with his sons, missed their targets as Iraq's dictator had not been there, but the invasion had begun. Understanding the Iraq War requires examining how the Bush administration decided to invade Iraq long before presenting evidence to justify the decision, using the September 11, 2001 terrorist attacks as justification for a war against a regime that had no connection to those attacks. In the immediate aftermath of September 11th, when al-Qaeda's attack on the World Trade Center and Pentagon killed nearly 3,000 Americans, Bush administration officials, including Defense Secretary Donald Rumsfeld and Deputy Defense Secretary Paul Wolfowitz, argued for attacking Iraq despite no evidence linking Saddam to the attacks and CIA assessments that Saddam and Osama bin Laden were ideological enemies who distrusted each other. The administration's case for war rested on claims that Iraq possessed chemical and biological weapons, was pursuing nuclear weapons, and might provide these to terrorists. Secretary of State Colin Powell presented intelligence to the United Nations in February 2003, claiming Iraq had mobile biological weapons laboratories, stockpiles of chemical weapons, and aluminum tubes for uranium enrichment. The presentation, which Powell later called a permanent blot on his record, relied on intelligence from sources including an Iraqi defector codenamed Curveball, who German intelligence had warned was unreliable and fabricating information. Behind the public case for war, the Bush administration pressured intelligence agencies to produce assessments supporting predetermined conclusions about Iraqi weapons programs and terrorism links. The Office of Special Plans, created within the Defense Department, cherry-picked intelligence to support the case for war while dismissing contradictory evidence. CIA analysts who questioned connections between Iraq and al-Qaeda found their assessments sidelined, while officials including Vice President Dick Cheney made repeated visits to CIA headquarters, an unusual practice that analysts interpreted as pressure to change their conclusions. International weapons inspectors who returned to Iraq in late 2002 and early 2003 found no evidence of active weapons programs and requested more time to complete their work, but the Bush administration dismissed their findings and insisted invasion could not wait. The urgency to invade before inspectors could definitively prove Iraq had no weapons of mass destruction suggested the administration feared confirmation that its justifications were false making war politically impossible. On March 20th, 2003, as the world's media watched, coalition forces crossed from Kuwait into southern Iraq in what officially became Operation Iraqi Freedom, though military planners called it Operation Cobra II. The invasion force numbered approximately 170,000 troops, the majority American, with significant British contingents and smaller forces from Australia and Poland, advancing rapidly toward Baghdad while bypassing southern cities to avoid urban combat that might slow the advance. The invasion plan reflected Defense Secretary Rumsfeld's insistence on using fewer troops than commanders recommended, rejecting estimates that occupation would require several 100,000 troops to maintain order, and instead assuming Iraqis would welcome American forces as liberators, requiring minimal post-invasion presence. Army Chief of Staff General Eric Shinseki testimony to Congress that occupation might require several 100,000 troops resulted in Rumsfeld and Deputy Defense Secretary Wolfowitz publicly dismissing his assessment as wildly off the mark, sending a message to military leaders that contradicting civilian leadership about post-war planning was career-ending. The advance toward Baghdad achieved rapid success as Iraqi resistance proved lighter than expected, with many Iraqi units dissolving as soldiers went home rather than fighting for a regime they did not support. American armor raced north through the Euphrates Valley, while Marines advanced from the southeast, encountering sporadic resistance from Iraqi regular forces and Fedayeen, Saddam irregular fighters, who used ambush tactics and fought from civilian areas. The battle for Nasiriyah on March 23rd provided the first indication that resistance might be tougher than anticipated when Iraqi forces ambushed an American maintenance convoy that accidentally entered the city, killing 11 soldiers and capturing 7, including Private Jessica Lynch. Task Force Tarawa's subsequent assault to secure bridges across the Euphrates encountered heavy resistance in street fighting that killed 18 Marines, with approximately 10 potentially killed by friendly fire when a 10 Warthog aircraft attacked American positions they could not properly identify. The air campaign that accompanied the ground invasion employed overwhelming firepower designed to shatter Iraqi command and control through what planners called shock and awe, saturating Baghdad with precision strikes on government buildings, communications facilities, and military installations. American aircraft flew thousands of sorties, dropping bombs and firing missiles in displays of technological superiority broadcast live on television, creating footage that dominated news coverage and reinforced narratives about American military dominance. The psychological warfare campaign extended beyond explosions to include millions of leaflets dropped on Iraqi positions, encouraging surrender, cell phone and email messages sent to Iraqi commanders offering them opportunities to defect, and radio broadcasts promising safety to those who abandoned Saddam. While few Iraqi soldiers formally surrendered to coalition forces, many simply went home, removing uniforms and disappearing into civilian populations rather than fighting for a regime that offered them nothing worth dying for. By early April, American forces approached Baghdad, having covered hundreds of miles in less than 3 weeks, suffering relatively light casualties while Iraqi organized resistance collapsed. The speed of the advance vindicated Rumsfeld's vision of rapid warfare using technological superiority and precision weapons, creating confidence that victory was inevitable and occupation would be brief. The assault on Baghdad began with armored raids called Thunder Runs, designed to probe Iraqi defenses, demonstrate American control of the city, and demoralize defenders by showing coalition forces could operate freely in the capital. On April 5th, Colonel David Perkins led Task Force 164 Armor on the first Thunder Run, a column of tanks and Bradley fighting vehicles that raced from Baghdad's airport through the city to test resistance. The column immediately encountered small arms fire that intensified as it advanced, with Iraqi fighters attacking from buildings and alleyways while American armor destroyed trucks and vehicles blocking streets. The raid succeeded in reaching the airport with minimal American casualties while claiming to kill approximately 2,000 Iraqi fighters, though the attack coincided with morning rush hour, and civilians were caught in crossfire, creating scenes of carnage that traumatized soldiers who witnessed families destroyed by weapons designed to kill tanks. On April 7th, Perkins launched a second Thunder Run directly into Baghdad's government district, planning to seize presidential palaces and remain overnight, despite orders from V Corps Commander William Wallace to conduct only another limited raid. Perkins led his armor into central Baghdad and occupied the Republican Palace area, where wide boulevards and parks provided advantageous fields of fire, then requested resupply convoys to bring ammunition to forces now committed to holding downtown Baghdad. Iraqi forces, including recently arrived foreign jihadists, launched heavy attacks on American infantry, securing highway overpasses behind Perkins's armor, nearly overrunning positions at an overpass called Curly, where ammunition ran low and Iraqi fighters pressed close assaults. The resupply convoy fought through ambushes to reach Perkins's forces downtown, while reinforcements secured the threatened overpasses, demonstrating that Iraqi resistance, though ultimately unsuccessful, was more determined than American commanders expected. With American armor occupying Baghdad's government district by April 8th, Iraqi organized resistance in the capital effectively ended as Saddam and his top officials fled. To dramatize the regime's fall, American forces assisted in toppling the large Saddam statue in Firdos Square on April 9th, in scenes broadcast worldwide as the defining image of liberation, with media comparing the moment to the fall of the Berlin Wall or liberation of Paris. The reality was more complex than the imagery suggested, as the crowd gathered around the statue numbered far fewer people than television coverage implied, with many participants being Iraqi exiles flown in by the Pentagon and American psychological operations personnel, helping orchestrate the event for maximum media impact. The carefully staged symbolism worked nonetheless, creating powerful visuals that dominated news coverage and reinforced narratives about grateful Iraqis welcoming liberation. British forces secured Basra in the south, while American forces advanced to Saddam's hometown of Tikrit by April 14th, encountering minimal resistance as Iraqi forces melted away. By late April, organized Iraqi military opposition had ended with casualties including 139 American and 33 British troops killed, along with estimated 7,000 to 45,000 Iraqi deaths, including approximately 7,400 civilians. On May 1, 2003, President Bush landed on the aircraft carrier USS Abraham Lincoln in a flight suit, delivering a speech under a "Mission Accomplished" banner, declaring that major combat operations in Iraq had ended. The banner, though officially referring to the carrier's completed deployment, was interpreted as declaring victory in Iraq and became an iconic image that would haunt the administration as the occupation descended into insurgency. Bush's speech acknowledged that challenges remained and that coalition forces would stay to help Iraq transition to democracy. But the triumphant staging and declaration that in the Battle of Iraq, the United States and our allies have prevailed suggested the war was effectively over. His approval rating soared to 71% as Americans celebrated what appeared to be a swift, decisive victory achieved with relatively few American casualties. Yet the most significant justification for war, Saddam's alleged weapons of mass destruction, had not been found. Weapons inspection teams searching Iraq discovered no stockpiles of chemical or biological weapons, no mobile weapons laboratories, no active nuclear program, and no evidence of recent weapons production. The aluminum tubes Powell had cited as evidence of uranium enrichment were determined by experts to be unsuitable for that purpose and probably intended for conventional rockets. The absence of weapons of mass destruction and the chaos that erupted in Baghdad and other Iraqi cities in the weeks following the invasion's end exposed the catastrophic failure of post-war planning. Looting engulfed Baghdad and other cities as Iraqis stripped government buildings, museums, hospitals, and stores of everything valuable or useful, destroying in days what American bombs had spared, while coalition forces did nothing to stop it. Defense Secretary Rumsfeld dismissed the looting as an inevitable expression of freedom, declaring that stuff happens and that freedom's untidy, comments that shocked Iraqis who interpreted coalition inaction as either inability or unwillingness to maintain order. Iraqi store owner Mohammed Abbas Abdul Al-Hur returned to Baghdad to find his neighborhood transformed. It was like some other place, and it was a depressing sight. You saw people walking everywhere, carrying looted goods. When I got into my neighborhood, I found the streets littered with weapons and Iraqi uniforms. Nowhere could you see any sign of law and order. Everything had collapsed. Thousands of weapons from unsecured Iraqi military depots disappeared into civilian hands, providing arms for the insurgency that would soon emerge. Coalition forces, numbering far fewer than required to secure a country of 25 million people, could not guard weapons storage facilities, patrol cities, or maintain basic services as Iraq's administrative state collapsed. President Bush appointed neoconservative Paul Bremer as head of the Coalition Provisional Authority in May 2003 to develop occupation policy, but Bremer faced contradictory pressures and limited troops. His first major decisions proved catastrophic when he ordered complete de-Baathification of Iraqi government and military, dismissing hundreds of thousands of government employees, teachers, and soldiers because of their Ba'ath Party membership required for most professional positions under Saddam. The decision to disband the Iraqi military put approximately 400,000 trained soldiers into unemployment with no income to support families, creating a massive pool of angry, armed men with military skills and grievances against the occupation. Many would join the insurgency, using American weapons taken from unsecured depots to attack the forces that had just defeated them. Operation Iraqi Freedom succeeded in removing Saddam Hussein from power within weeks, demonstrating American military's technological superiority and ability to project force globally, but achieved none of the broader objectives used to justify invasion. No weapons of mass destruction were found because they did not exist, with Iraq's programs having been dismantled in the 1990s under UN supervision. No operational links between Saddam and al-Qaeda existed despite administration claims. And rather than becoming a democratic model for the Middle East, Iraq descended into sectarian violence and insurgency that would kill hundreds of thousands. The intelligence failures that enabled the war revealed systemic problems where political pressure to support predetermined policy conclusions overwhelmed rigorous analysis. Intelligence agencies provided assessments confirming what policymakers wanted to hear rather than challenging assumptions, while officials dismissed experts who questioned the case for war. The result was that the United States invaded based on false premises, discovered the falsity only after invasion, and then had to justify occupation using different arguments than those that had justified invasion. The inadequate post-war planning reflected Rumsfeld's determination to prove that modern warfare could be won with fewer troops using technology, and that occupation would be brief with Iraqis, quickly assuming responsibility for security and governance. The refusal to prepare for difficult occupation scenarios, despite warnings from military leaders and Middle East experts, meant that when Iraq descended into chaos, coalition forces lacked resources, plans, or policies to respond effectively. The consequences extended far beyond Iraq as the war damaged American credibility internationally, strained alliances, diverted resources from Afghanistan, where al-Qaeda's leadership had fled, after September 11th and demonstrated limits of military power in achieving political transformation. The war cost approximately $2 trillion, killed nearly 4,500 American service members and hundreds of thousands of Iraqis, and created conditions for the rise of ISIS in the power vacuum left by Iraq's destroyed state structures. The real story behind Operation Iraqi Freedom is how a war sold as preventing future terrorist attacks actually created conditions that produced terrorism, how assumptions about easy victory and grateful populations collided with reality of occupation resisted by Iraqis who resented foreign military presence regardless of whether they had supported Saddam, and how failure to plan for occupation transformed military success into strategic disaster. The mission may have been accomplished in removing Saddam, but the broader mission of creating stable, democratic Iraq had barely begun when Bush declared victory, and would prove far more difficult and costly than removing a dictator. The war's impact on American foreign policy proved equally significant, as the failures in Iraq made future military interventions politically difficult, with politicians and publics questioning intelligence claims and resisting calls for action even when genuine threats emerged. The damage to America's international standing, particularly after revelations about torture at Abu Ghraib prison and CIA black sites, undermined moral authority the United States had claimed in justifying invasion as liberation rather than conquest. European allies who opposed the invasion felt vindicated by the absence of weapons of mass destruction and grew skeptical of American intelligence assessments and military judgment. The insurgency that emerged in 2004 and 2005 demonstrated that removing a dictator was far easier than building stable governance to replace him, that sectarian tensions suppressed under authoritarian rule could explode into civil war when controls disappeared, and that foreign military occupation, regardless of intentions, generates resistance among populations who resent foreign troops patrolling their streets and searching their homes. American forces remained in Iraq until 2011, withdrew as the insurgency appeared contained, then returned in 2014 when ISIS seized large portions of Iraq and Syria, demonstrating that military victory without political settlement produces only temporary stability that collapses when troops depart. The mission may have been accomplished in removing Saddam, but the broader mission of creating stable, democratic Iraq had barely begun when Bush declared victory, and would prove far more difficult and costly than removing a dictator. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button and subscribe for more history content covering wars, revolutions, and events that shaped the modern world. Thanks for watching.